Well, hello there. I am Drew Badger, the English Fluency Guide, and in this video I am a little bit sick and I have a fever, but I thought I would make this video. I know a lot of my learners are looking forward to it, and this is my special, even though I'm not, I wish I was more excited and healthier for this one. I really wanted to get into the studio and make it for everyone. Even when I'm at home and sick, I'm still thinking about my learners and how I can help people. But anyway, this is my 1,000 subscriber, or not 1,000, 1 million subscriber special. And so I wanted to talk about a whole bunch of things. And I know when I look at these kinds of videos on people's channels, they always seem a little bit, I don't know, it kind of like people aren't so interested in them. So I don't know how many people will watch this. But for the people who do, I would like to share a whole bunch of great information about how to learn. So this is more about you than it is about me. But I know a lot of my subscribers have been following me for a long time, some of them many years, in fact. And so it's a great milestone for them, and this is a great thank you to them as well. But I do apologize again because, again, I have a fever. So if I'm not thinking as clearly or speaking as well as I normally do, or if I have to cough or get a drink of water or something, I may just have to do that. But anyway, this is a video for you, and hopefully I've got some notes written up here as well so I can remember what to talk about because I can't think straight right now. But anyway, kind of starting at the beginning here, or the beginning of where the channel was and all the history that we've had, especially for the people who've been following us for a while. I think it's been 10 years. That's a really long time. And truth be told, this is a really great expression for you. Just native speakers will use it when they're going to admit something or to confess something. They'll say, truth be told, and then explain something after that. So truth be told, I never really wanted to or had a plan to be making videos when I was first teaching people. So it was never really my plan to get onto YouTube and try to make a YouTube channel. And I never had any intention of growing something to try to be 1 million followers or anything like that. My goal from the very beginning, because I struggled with languages for so many years, and I taught so many people who struggled when I was a classroom teacher, that I really wanted to find the best way to help people learn. So for many, many years, I've been thinking about that, and I've actually discovered a number of things that I had no idea about for both language learning and specifically English language learning. So I'm going to share some of those secrets with you because some people, maybe you have been following me for a while and you know them already, but this is a great refresher for you, and also for newer people who have just discovered my channel who would like to get a lot of great information all in one video. This will be the place to get it. So before I get into that, again, big thank you to everyone for helping me reach 1 million subscribers. You and everybody watching out there has contributed to that. An even more important milestone, in my opinion, and this is something I don't really talk about on the channel, is $1 million in sales. So I've actually sold over $1 million worth of English language learning material. And the money really isn't so important to me. It's more about how I've actually been able to help people, and they have actually not just watched videos on YouTube, but actually subscribed to my programs. And I hit that milestone a long time ago. So I was really proud about that. I didn't make any video about like, yay, I've got money or anything, because I don't have a lot, and really what I'm doing is putting all that back into helping people learn. So that's why I'm still like always got the same clothes on that I've had before, not physically the same clothes, but I try to keep my life very simple, and I put all my energy back into helping people. So I'll be talking a bit more about that on the channel. But I wanted to say thank you specifically to all the people who have joined specific programs that I've made, and you have made it possible not only for me to do what I love doing, which is to help teach people, but also to invest in the business itself and actually create something that's going to help a lot of people and has already helped a lot of people. So thank you very much to those people as well. So we will consider this the 1 million subscriber, $1 million in sales video. It's actually interesting. More people people recently have been asking me about how I do what I do, asking me more about business advice, so I might do more of that. I always find lots of great business examples for people learning languages, learning English specifically, but if you find interesting ways of connecting the dots for thinking about different ways of applying an idea from one thing and using it in something else like language learning, you really get a lot of that from business, because part of it is a struggle and it is a journey in the same way that you're learning a language. And again, I won't talk too much about that, but again, just a big thank you for everyone who has been with me, whether you're new or whether you've been learning with me for a while and you've shared my videos and you've helped me grow, you've given me great feedback. So I want to talk about a lot of the things that I discovered along the way. So this is going to be, we call this a crash course, where you're getting a lot of information very quickly. I won't be speaking so fast, but I wanted to put a lot of great information into this video so that new people can get caught up and they will learn a lot of the things that other people who've been following my channel for a while have known for a while and have already been applying in their learning. So going back kind of to the beginning of the story, I was a classroom teacher and looking for a way to actually do gardening because that's why I came to Japan initially. And I had not, even when I came to Japan, planned on doing any kind of teaching. I mean, that's what I was doing when I came here, but that's not the reason I came to Japan. I came here to study gardening, which I did. And I've talked about that on previous videos or in previous videos. But when I was thinking about how can I help people and learning the different things that I had discovered about language learning, because my Japanese was awful and I really didn't know any Japanese at all when I came to Japan, and I saw all of my students in the classroom were not really learning very well. And this wasn't just my classroom because I was a bad teacher. This was just everybody. So teaching in a traditional elementary school here in Japan, as well as junior high school, and teaching lots of adults. Basically everybody teaches the same way, and these problems are still continuing to this day. And so I decided back then that I would figure out a way that everyone around the world could actually learn if they wanted to. And so when I had that idea, I thought, when I create something, I'm going to call it English Anyone, because anyone can do it. And right now, like kind of if you look at the way people are learning languages, it's still mostly the traditional way. So I think I've helped some people, but I've got to do a better job of showing people how to learn and making it easier for people to learn as well. So I'll talk more about that in this video, but this is just a little bit of the history about why I got into this. And so my kind of ultimate aim was to make a system that anybody could use to learn. And the only thing really that I had available at the time was video. And so that's why I started doing that. And I wanted to leverage my time and leverage my energy as well. So I could teach, good classes, but I'd have to do the same thing again and again, or students couldn't really review the lessons. But if I could make a video of that thing, then I could put that online and anyone could learn with it whenever they wanted, and that would help them just improve, and they could go back and review that information. And so it helped me leverage my time. But it still wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, and I'll be getting to that a little bit later in the video. But as I've gone through the years, and I'm always just focusing as a guide, and just to make this clear, there are many different reasons why a traditional teacher is different from a guide, but I think the most important one is that a guide is really focused on the student and not focused on the language. Does that make sense? So a teacher is spending all their time going to they go to school, they get a master's degree or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with this. It's really understanding the intricacies or the specific details about the language itself. But what you often don't learn so much about is how to connect with the learner and the problems that the learner really experiences. And you kind of, as a teacher, you have the language and you try to push the learner onto that. And what I do as a guide is the opposite. I'm trying to integrate the language into the life of the learner. Now, these might seem like I'm just creating this idea, but if you go back to regular classes, it's a teacher standing at the front of the room explaining things to people, but they're not really understanding anything, and the language doesn't become theirs. And so that's really the key with a guide. And this is something I discovered. I created this idea of an English fluency guide, which has been copied, and other people have taken that same idea and applied it in different ways, and even with other languages. But I think it's a really important one for language learning, because we still learn like humans and not like computers. And so if I could help more people understand that, because this is how I got fluent, and then when I started helping my personal students get fluent in the same way, they started having much better results. They started feeling more confident, feeling more fluent. And as I did that, I stopped kind of learning, because I spent many years actually learning about teaching. But I spent, when I started spending more time focusing on the learners rather than on the language, I found I was able to help people a lot more. Does that make sense? So this is just kind of the first major discovery, the biggest secret for me about helping people. So is moving from being a teacher in the classroom to being a guide. So I'm working with a student or kind of explaining people how to discover things. And I'll explain what the highest level of that kind of last thing I discovered most recently. I'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this video. But anyway, so that's my thinking about being a guide and how I could help people. And so I started making videos in the beginning, focusing less on like, here's a grammar point you should know, and here's some interesting psychological thing, like a problem that you might be having with your confidence, or other things like that that actually stop people from learning. So there's a mix of learning the language and the mindset information. This is how you think, and that's what actually helps you become a more confident, fluent speaker. So that was the first big discovery I made. So I want to talk about a few more. These are just interesting things I discovered as I'm focusing on the student. So I'm really listening to students, and the problem of becoming fluent in a second language is tricky, because there are all these different pieces that have to work together. And so I developed this idea of the 7 English fluency habits because, again, what most teachers are doing in a classroom is they're just focusing on the language. They're not focusing so much on the skill development, and especially things like confidence and the psychology that you should have if you want to learn. So if you don't feel positive, you don't feel excited, you don't feel powerful, I know these may sound a little bit weird for language learning, but if you're not feeling excited about speaking, then you're not going to say anything, so you won't be able to practice, and so you won't be able to improve. So the thinking about that kind of idea, I wanted to have a series of different skills that people improve. So these are the different habits you have as a language learner. And when you're able to improve all of these things, that's what actually develops your fluency. Because the thing that you're worst in, whatever that habit happens to be, you might know a lot of information, as many of my students do. They know a lot of vocabulary, but they're still unable to connect things because they're weak in some of these other habits. And often this is about, like, they're not reviewing things and practicing things and developing the other habits that usually teachers don't focus on in school. So when I was thinking about that, again, I'm focusing on the student and less on the language. And so I begin with the student, and I'm thinking, okay, how can I help someone develop all of these skills by doing one thing? So I always challenge myself to do that, because I know, like, as a learner myself, I'm also, I'm going to admit I'm a little bit lazy. I want some way to do something easily. But even more important than that, I want a way to focus on something, because if you can focus your energy on a particular goal or problem or whatever that is, then the solution or the path to getting to that thing becomes a lot easier to find. So in that case, one of the most important discoveries I made as a teacher, and again, this wasn't me just thinking about the language, it was thinking about the student, and the student has all these problems where they're having trouble with grammar, pronunciation, not feeling very confident, their listening isn't very good. All of these things are actually attached. They're connected together. And so I thought about what's the best thing I could teach them? What's one thing I could teach them that if they learned this thing really well, that they would be able to practice more easily, they would feel more confident, improve their listening and their grammar, all of these things. And it turned out to be phrasal verbs. And so phrasal verbs were things, or they are things like pick up and turn over, or stand up, even to just make some very basic ones. But these are the way, especially now, having my own children and noticing how I teach them, these are the ways that children speak. And when adults are explaining things to children, they're using phrasal verbs. And so I keep coming back to this idea about how to help people learn the native way. So if you learn the vocabulary that natives are using, you will become a more confident speaker. So you will understand people more, and you will understand the ways that natives are really communicating. So you can just learn more English vocabulary, but there is a lot of vocabulary. You have to understand what's most important for you to learn. And so this idea of, okay, we focus on phrasal verbs because this is, it like ticks all of these boxes. So that's a great expression as well, to tick all of the boxes. So if you got little check marks or whatever, it's like, okay, it improves your grammar, improves your listening, your pronunciation. You feel more confident because you're learning the real natural vocabulary that natives use. And it's the same thing children use. So you can actually see your development and you can improve much faster and understand things, and you feel or become a much more fluent speaker much faster that way. So when I say it like ticks all the boxes, I was really excited about this because I had looked for something like that for a long time. But again, I was thinking about it not as a teacher, but as a guide. So you begin with the learner and figure out what are the things they're really struggling with and how can you make that easier. So obviously there are many things you can do to improve all of the individual habits you might have. But if you can do one thing and improve them all, wow, that's amazing. So I created my visual guide to phrasal verbs as a result of that, but really it was just the kind of the secret that was an important thing for people to focus on. And then, of course, after I do that, I notice lots of people making videos about teaching phrasal verbs. But the point isn't to like stop other people from doing that. I'm really glad to see other teachers, wanting to teach phrasal verbs, but I think many of them may not have known why I had focused on that. And so if people are like just teaching that kind of thing, it's important to understand that. Again, that's the difference between just teaching something because it's popular or because other people told you to do that, like you learn in a classroom, or because you actually discover that by focusing on the student. Does that make sense? Anyway, so that was like discovery number, well, we talked about a couple different things, but this is one of the important discoveries I made, and so I thought I would share that with you in this video. The next one was about memory. Again, I'm not thinking about how I should be teaching because I'm a teacher. I'm not thinking about kind of an education way. I'm looking at the problems that learners have and really trying to focus on the things that they struggle with. And so in my case, continually talking with learners about what are the things that you have the greatest difficulty with in conversations. And a lot of that had to do with memory. And I admit, and I'm sure like it's kind of hard to say that for most people, that a lot of memory is just repetition, where you're going through and practicing something again and again, and that's how you just learn to remember it. But there are faster ways of doing this. And so the next major discovery I made when I was thinking, again, what's one simple way I could use to kind of take an idea or something that I could teach to people to help them remember their words and vocabulary, that kind of thing like that. So there are different ways to remember. And initially, when I was kind of just starting as a teacher, I was thinking more like a teacher and thinking, what are traditional ways that people use to remember things, like you're trying to kind of tell stories or using mnemonics. These are memory aids, like as an example, in Japan, if you go to like a barbecue place on the 29th of the month, most places have a discount because the Japanese for 29 is like ni ku. because it sounds, and that's the word for meat. So this is a way of remembering something. So like Nikunohi, like meat day. And so people go there. Sorry for people on, in February, because there's no 29th. I guess there was this year, but for thinking about that. Oh man, I'm really losing my voice. Let me get a sip of water. Wow. But stay with me. Stay with me. So anyway, the discovery I had was, again, I'm focusing on the student and really looking at the problem. And the problem is not really the vocabulary. It's how the learner is able to connect that vocabulary with what they kind of connect with the vocabulary they want to learn. And the real problem with this is that in your mind, you already have an idea for something. You already have a word for something in your mind, in your native language, for the word you want to learn. So as an example, if you're Italian or Portuguese or Chinese or whatever, you already have a word in your mind. If I show you a picture of a bird, so you have a picture in your mind and you have a word for that. So when you're trying to push the English word into your mind, you either have to do it many, many times through repetition, or you have to create some kind of story or something like that in order to remember that word. Or the discovery I made was that businesses are actually dealing with this very specific problem, and they've been dealing with it successfully for years. And this is where you're actually trying to put a new word or a new idea first in someone's mind. And so if a new company, I've given this example before, but as an example, we begin with the idea of a computer. So when you first have an idea of a computer, one company A, releases a computer. Now, company B tries to sell the computer as well. Now, some people might buy a computer from company B, but most people are buying from company A because they're first. So company A created this idea of a computer, and then they got that idea into the minds of people, and so this is just known as positioning. So you're known for being able to do something. Interestingly, my own positioning is an English fluency guide, not a teacher. So I've deliberately taken this same idea and applied it, because I understand how people think rather than what I would do as a teacher. So this is part of the reason. I've done that already, but trying to teach in a way that a guide would teach, but nobody was using that term, and so I created that idea and started using it. So in the same way, a company, if you want to try to sell computers, you can't just sell computers. You have to create a new kind of thing, like a desktop computer or a portable computer or something like that. You're essentially creating a new category of thing, and that's what's going to help you sell your thing. So people will now think, oh, it's not just computers, here's this new kind of thing. So this is what companies are doing all the time, and what they're really doing is trying to find a new, a space in your mind. I talk about popular video I have about how to learn 10,000 words is about this same idea. So it's where I'm sharing the secret about how to make things memorable, and it's really by doing that. So because of this idea, I created a memory program, and that was able to help lots of people as well. I admit this is probably my most difficult program because people have to understand this idea, but once you understand it, you really think wow, that's a really cool way to do things, and your mind opens up and you start thinking about things in new ways. So I don't offer that program to a lot of people, but the people I do offer it to, if they really want to improve their memory, obviously repeating things is a great way to do that. But if you want to have kind of the fast track to do this, the same way that companies are doing this with products, you can do it with words and phrases. I show people how to do that in How to Remember Any English Word. So the products or the courses that I create, they begin with problems that people have. So again, Visual Guide to Phrasal Verbs came from how can we help people develop all of their fluency skills by doing just one thing. Memory comes from how do we help people remember words and build a huge vocabulary quickly and then be able to use it in conversations without thinking. And then the third thing I discovered, and these aren't in in order, really. I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier for people to understand the different things that we do and why I do them. But I, again, focused on the learner And you see this pattern here. I'm trying to get you to see this pattern. Maybe like, I don't know, maybe 100 people or 200 people will watch this video. I don't know. We'll see. But again, if you're really listening to these ideas, it should be like, wow, this is like very valuable, not only for as a language learner, but for business and other things as well. So the third major thing that I discovered as an educator, as an English fluency guide, again, by focusing on the learner and really thinking about what are the specific problems people were having, the next major thing was actually the vocabulary and the specific phrases and words that people needed to know in order to have conversations. And I noticed a lot of people were they were worried and they were nervous because they thought they didn't know it all. So many people thought they needed to know every word or be prepared for every situation when they get into a conversation. And so because of this, they spend lots of time learning, and they're trying to study things again and again and again, and spend a lot of time improving or learning more vocabulary, but they still never feel fluent because they never feel like they've gotten all of it. So they're always trying to study more and more, and they hope somehow they become fluent, and fluency doesn't develop like that. Fluency actually develops word by word. This is another thing I developed or kind of discovered as I was helping people. But fluency develops really word by word when you understand something and then you can use it automatically. So that's what fluency means. But a lot of people spend their time just trying to learn more vocabulary because they think vocabulary equals fluency. But it's not true. And we know that's not true because if you look at children who can speak very well without a large vocabulary, they can often speak better than adults who know many more words than they do because they learned the right way. So thinking about this idea, kind of one of the most kind of interesting or fun things that I like to teach people is that you don't need to know everything in order to be a confident speaker. So me, I don't know everything about Japanese. There's a lot I don't know. I still make quite a few mistakes when I speak. But in general, I have conversations about all kinds of things just fine, daily conversations, and I'm confident when I do, even when I make a mistake. And that's because I understand that most people are only using a very small amount of their vocabulary when they speak. And so this is an amazing idea. It was certainly an amazing idea for me when I just watched people. Again, I'm always watching people, watching learners, watching natives, how they speak. And so when I'm thinking about what's the best way to help people learn, number one, I'm explaining you don't need to know everything because nobody's using all of their vocabulary in conversations. Most people are just using the same things again and again when they're talking. You know, talk with people about the weather or their family or some things. People tell the same stories again and again. And it's usually the same kinds of lessons even when you're, practicing with someone and talking about whatever. And so the problem is that most of the vocabulary people learn in the classroom is the vocabulary that's not used in conversations. So you're actually in a regular classroom spending a lot of time learning vocabulary that's either too difficult or it's just not really used very often in conversations. So you're not actually learning, number one, the conversational English that natives really use, and number two, the small amount of vocabulary that's used most frequently. So what I did is just after studying lots of conversations and thinking more, like as I started thinking about these ideas, I thought about my own speech and listening to people more carefully. I'm always listening to people's conversations when I'm just sitting around. And, I notice people are using the same kinds of phrases again and again. Or there'll be some things that are popular now that maybe were not so popular years ago. And new phrases are born all the time and they become popular. So if you watch these kinds of things, then you really start to see kind of the obvious trends and the obvious maybe patterns that you see in conversations. So this was the thing that led to Mastering English Conversation and the Fluency course. So when I was creating that, again, I begin with what's the real issue here? So students have lots of trouble. They're trying to think about too many words and they're not really focused on the few things that they could learn that would help them become great speakers. And so once they could focus on that and they could learn these things in simple steps, because the most difficult thing people do when they're a student and they're trying to learn how a native actually speaks is they try to watch a movie or a TV show or something like that, but they're often overwhelmed by all the information. There's too much vocabulary. It's too fast. Their accents, and again, even just native speakers can have a hard time understanding other natives sometimes. So if I'm speaking with someone from Ireland or Scotland or something, I might maybe misunderstand something, or the vocabulary is even different. So when I'm in a situation like that and I'm focusing on the learner, thinking about the specific problem they have, how can I create a solution to that? And this is actually helping people learn with real conversations. And so all the things that I've done, it's come from learners. And it's because I'm not focusing on trying to teach the language. I'm focusing on the student. I'm focusing on you, really. Thinking about how I can help you with your problems. And these are like, again, I spend like thousands and thousands of hours thinking about this stuff just so I can come up with a few powerful secrets. Isn't that interesting? So I spend all this time and really trying to think about that, even while I'm sleeping, thinking about, it's crazy. Many years ago, I did not think I would be spending time thinking about teaching people, or, before I started teaching, I didn't even know what a phrasal verb was. And most natives don't know what a phrasal verb is either. If you ask one, say, hey, what's a phrasal verb? They will say, wow, that sounds crazy. I don't know what that is, but they use them all the time. And so when you understand, thinking more about how natives are actually using the language, and as a teacher, I know many teachers follow what I do. So this is the most important thing, is to focus on the learner. You are their guide. You are the person trying to help them and figure out what their problems are, and not trying to push the language onto them, but try to integrate the language into their life. And so here's the biggest secret of all, and this is a thing that I didn't really discover it. It was like many small discoveries over the course of teaching, things that reminded me or let me know that this was really the most important thing I could do, and kind of like the biggest mission for my teaching career was created out of this. And this is that you must own the language for yourself. You must own the language. Now, I'm going to make this a bit more clear, because I know that doesn't sound very clear. I apologize. But the general idea is that humans, and this is, again, a psychology thing. It's not thinking about the language. It's thinking about the learners. And this is that if an idea comes from you, then you remember it more, you like the idea more, you can use that idea and you can explain it to people very easily. So when you discover an idea by yourself, rather than someone telling you an idea, that idea is just, it could be the same idea. Like one person could tell you an idea and you could discover that same idea yourself, but you would feel a lot more excited about that idea, and it would become much more memorable to you when you discover it yourself. And parents experience this all the time when they tell their children one thing and then the child makes a mistake. They don't understand the lesson, but maybe years later the child discovers that lesson doing something and they're like, oh yeah, I understand now. So what they really mean is that like they owned the lesson. And so if you've been a subscriber to Master English Conversation, or if you've been learning with me for a long time, you know my basic philosophy is the real goal or the real mission of a teacher is to create a path for learners that they can discover things themselves. So, and it's not trying to help people like tell you what the answer is. It's like make the environment available or the situation so that you understand, and then you can understand the lesson, and it really makes a lot of sense. So I'm going to give you a more clear example of this. So this is a story I've told before on the channel, but this was when I was visiting some friends of mine in Fukuoka, which is another city here in Japan, and I was talking with them. We were saying, hey, let's go to a barbecue restaurant. So we went there, but I was sitting there by myself for a while because they had to go do something or they were late. I don't remember exactly, but so we were going there, and I was sitting at this restaurant by myself, and I saw a poster on the wall for a movie. This is an American movie called After Earth. So I knew the name of the movie, and it was written in English on that too. But everything else on the poster was in Korean, which I don't know. But I challenged myself right there because I didn't have anything else to do to see if I could figure out some Korean. So again, I don't know any Korean at all. I've never studied Korean before. But just looking at this poster, I begin to kind of like it's like a mystery movie. I'm looking around for clues and seeing if I can figure out any of that on my own. Because I know that I'll understand something. If I understand something by myself, I'll feel really excited about that, and I'll want to like remember that idea, and it will again be more powerful than someone just trying to teach me some Korean, like, hey, remember these things. Because again, like if you tell your child, hey, don't touch that, it's hot, they're not going to listen to you. But if they touch the hot stove by themselves, then they remember all that much more clearly, and they don't do it again. So I'm watching this thing, looking at the poster, and I see at the top there's some Korean writing for, it looks like, I'm guessing, is the names of the actors in the movie. Now, luckily for me, the two actors in this movie, After Earth, it's Will Smith and his son, Jaden Smith. So they have the same Smith last name. And sure enough, I'm looking at this poster and I see, oh, like, look at that. It's the same Korean character, like, probably it's like Japanese because it's like 3 characters for the last name. So it's probably phonetic, like Su-mi-su. And so I looked at that, and yeah, like the first character and the third character were the same one. So it's like, oh, okay, it's probably the same like Su character. So it's probably Su-mi-su. And I looked at the other name, and it was the same thing. I said, oh, wow, look at that. I bet that's true. And then I look at my phone and just, okay, if I can figure out some Korean, it's like, yeah, that's what it is. And I noticed that same character was also in the name of the movie, which is After Earth. But in Korean, I'm guessing it would be like asu, something like that. So it's similar to what it would be in Japanese. So anyway, I'm sitting there and I was really like, look at it, it's just yet another example of how if I learn something, if I discover something, then it becomes my first language. And it's not something that someone else was trying to teach me. So one of the main things that I try to educate people about on this channel is that there's no such thing as a second language. That's a thing in your mind that you create where you're like, well, this is a second language. And because you think it's a second language, you try to learn it as a second language way. So people think, okay, you have to use flashcards and you have to do all this other stuff. But again, it's not what you do. You're actually pushing yourself further away from the language when you do that. But if really you remember, you're already speaking multiple first languages by yourself. So you speak one way with your parents, one way with kids that you see, one way casually, one way professionally. These are all different languages. And so you already speak multiple first languages fluently. And you can make English your first language as well if you learn in that same way. So you got to make it your own language. And so this is why all the teaching I try to do, I'm not really like teaching people things. I'm more giving them an environment where they discover the lesson. And that's why people can't really say why they like the lessons. They're just like, yeah, I really like learned a lot. What they mean is that they discovered something themselves. Does that make sense? So that's like the biggest kind of secret about what I do. So I've taken that, and as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, what I really wanted to do was create a system that anybody could use to teach themselves how the language works. Because if you can do that, then without a teacher trying to tell you something, you really discover the language for yourself. But this wasn't really possible many years ago when I started teaching on YouTube. Video was the best thing that I had available at that time. But now I actually have what I need, and that's software. So that's why from the beginning, I was always thinking, how can I create a system? And that's when I began building Frederick, which is the first of a series of apps that we're making to help people learn. And this is why it's really the fastest way to learn a second language, because you're discovering the rules for yourself. You're able to compare different sounds and see how they work and they relate to one another. And that's what's actually going to help you become a fluent speaker much faster. You own the language when you can learn it that way. So while basically everybody else is still trying to do things the traditional way, which is I'm going to tell you what things are, I'm going to give you a list of words or grammar points to remember, I'm going to let you discover that. So this is what I call explorative learning. So another thing I developed, not because I'm special, but it's because I'm watching what learners do. So everything I do is for you out there, all my learners. And again, like there are lots of people who have larger YouTube channels than mine. I think that's fantastic. But I'm just focusing on you, and I really want to help you. That's what I do. And again, I just wanted to say thank you for taking the time to learn with me. And it's been a great journey. I'm also learning a lot from you. So hopefully this makes sense. I've tried to share a lot of information in this video. I wanted this not just to be like a typical, like, hey, I've got a number of subscribers or whatever, and that's it. So here's what I'm doing to celebrate. I'm going back to work. So like I was never like, hey, I want to hit, X number of subscribers and make all this money or whatever and go buy a house or something. Like I never stopped working. I'm always here. I'm always going back and doing what I want to do because I love to teach and I love to show people, especially when they've been learning one way and it's been really difficult for them and they've had lots of problems. And when they finally see that language learning doesn't have to be difficult if you do it in the right way. We are actually designed to learn perfectly well any language we want to learn. It's just how we learn that. So I always tell learners that you were born to speak, and you were born to speak multiple languages. It just depends on how you learn them. So most people are not going to get that opportunity. And so even the million people or, whenever people are watching this in the future, discover this video, remember that you really can become a confident, fluent speaker of any language you want to if you're learning the right way. And hopefully other people will continue to copy what I'm doing so that more people can apply this to different languages, for learning anything out there. People are already asking me, hey, when are you going to teach Spanish and like French and other things like that? I say, no, it's English, English, because we've still got a lot of work to do. And so that's what I'm doing. So I'm taking a couple minutes to make this video, and then I'm going right back to work. I'm not shooting this on the moon or something like that. Anyway, I don't want to make this video too long. How long has this been? Oh man, it's like 40 minutes or something like that. Now, knowing YouTube, a lot of people will not make it to the end of this video, but hopefully the people who do got some really great information. And I'd love to know how I've helped you. If you've been following me for a while, or even if you're new, please post a comment down below this video. I don't need to hear thank you or anything. It's just more like, how have you improved? Or what is something you've learned from me that's been really helpful, because other people will read the comments and that will help them too. Because even with the amount of information I've shared, there is really a lot more that I could probably share for people. And I hope really you understand the power is in your hands to become a great speaker. Anyway, I'm losing my voice over here, so that will be the end of the video for me. If you'd like to learn more about all the different programs I talked about, just come to EnglishAnyone.com or send us a mail at info@EnglishAnyone.com. And really, that's, again, all the things that we create. It's because we saw problems and wanted to really create something that was perfect for learners. And because I didn't sit in a classroom to learn Japanese. Japanese is the first language really where I only had maybe 4 classroom lessons before I quit those and then just started applying these principles on my own and then started speaking that. Anyway, have a fantastic day. Thank you again so much for learning with me and for being on this journey with me and for just being an awesome subscriber and viewer of the channel. I wish you the best, and however you continue to learn, try to get things from me, maybe other people that you enjoy learning with, and keep working towards fluency, because I know you can do it. All right, well, that's it. Now I can save my voice. Oh man, been talking too much. Have a fantastic day, and if you'd like to keep learning, you can do these 3 simple things right now. 1. Click on this link to subscribe to my YouTube channel for over 500 free videos. 2. Click on this link to download my #1 ebook guide to fast fluency free. And 3. Click here to watch the most popular video on English fluency here on YouTube.